Great. Well, I'm super excited today. Thanks so much for having us here and all the planning and preps, Anne-Marie, that it took for you to make this happen. It's been such a great day. I'm super excited to be here with Amy and Catherine and to kind of facilitate this discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about finding real-world relationships and avoiding bias in AI. So I'll do a brief intro on myself and then pass it over to these other wonderful women to give them their backgrounds as well. I'm Trista Pierce. I work at Booz Allen Hamilton. I help develop use cases for public sector clients in their digital transformation efforts and do R&D and experimentation at the intersection of XR and 5G, IoT, digital twin technologies. And it's a really great space to be in. And I've got to know these two wonderful women in the process. Pass it over to you.
I guess I'll go next. That's a hard act to follow. My name is Catherine Ordun. I'm an executive advisor at Booz Allen. But what that really means is I'm currently a PhD candidate at University of Maryland. I do a lot of work in applied computer science and AI, especially generative modeling. And so I've had the fortune of being able to lead a lot of our R&D work when it comes to healthcare, defense, and some work in law enforcement. So very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm Amy Peck. I'm the founder and CEO of Endeavor XR. We do a lot of strategy work with companies on immersive technology with subspecialties in AI and blockchain, because really we look at the solutions of the future as being the confluence of all of these technologies. I've had the good fortune to see Trista and actually be on panels with her over the last 6 months or so. I'm meeting Catherine as well. I've met a number of people at Booz Allen. I've been super impressed with the work that they're doing and very excited to be here with both of you today.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess we can kick it off, and I wanted to ask you both to chat on how AI really mirrors and even influences our day-to-day relationships and interactions, and maybe share some examples of where we might be seeing and using AI and not even really realize it.
Do you want to start, Catherine?
Yeah. I've been pondering this question. You know, I'm not that cool and hip. However, I am on TikTok, and I do have a micro following, which are mainly people as nerdy as me who are interested in AI. But actually, a lot of my dissertation research focuses on affective computing, which is a way of saying emotions and AI, and looking at different types of human signals and spectra when it comes to understanding how people respond to different stimuli. And so being on TikTok, and this I think is pervasive across a lot of the technologies that we use, both for our entertainment as well as our retail experience. TikTok is just a very, very good example. The entire experience of being able to not only tailor what you're interested in, but also find people and subjects and topics that are of interest to you is really, really driven by AI. Not only the AI algorithm for recommendation, but everything from different types of filters, so much so that people, constrain their behavior sometimes in negative and toxic ways, like how they look, their pose of their head, clothing, everything about kind of their demeanor and their look using their mobile phone. There's a lot of generative AI technology that's going on in the back end of many of these AR, VR filters. And there's good parts and bad parts. I touched a little bit about the toxicity of it, especially for some of the young folks and their mental health. But at the same time, there are some pretty amazing applications that can kind of drive your experience into these different kind of micro virtual worlds on your phone. And I think for the average user, it may not be so obvious, but a lot of these types of technologies that are AI driven are infused into so many of the things that we do every day now. We should expect to see more of them in the future.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up TikTok, because I think as well, it's interesting socially, especially around what we saw social media prior to TikTok, and one of the reasons that TikTok took off so broadly was the authenticity, that people were able to be, really a very raw, in some cases very raw version of themselves, or to showcase their talent, as opposed to what we were doing, which was just carefully crafting and curating, little snippets of our lives to kind of make this, highlight reel. That has changed somewhat. Again, you referenced filters, Catherine. I think some of those things are kind of moving again away back to that carefully curated content, but also finding a level of community, right? And having people that you can gravitate to. And I think the human factors, I think, it's a good start for us here with this topic today, because the human factors are the thing that this is why we use technology. And I think we can forget that sometimes. I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of hype around AI. We talked a little bit in one of the earlier panels about, it was all metaverse for almost 2 years. And then, ChatGPT was released. And it's not just the hype cycle. What was interesting is it's how people are actually using it. And what we've missed with immersive technology that AI and ChatGPT have is day-to-day utility. And until we see that with, especially for consumers, certainly in business, we have excellent use cases for XR technology and immersive technology. But not that day-to-day, right outside of gaming or entertainment. And so, as we look to the future, and even our topic today, how do we, protect the veracity of the data that's going in? How do we make sure that it's clean? How do we make sure that we're not hard coding, unconscious bias? Those are things that, I think in aggregate, I'm glad that, we're here with Women of the Future, right? We need women as part of this conversation. Classically, and it's I think it's very, very important to have a very, very diverse workforce working on these algorithms, looking at how we are, building the AI for the future, and especially as it faces consumers, right? Because that's where we start to have, the challenges and the dangers of what could actually go wrong.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I really love that you hit on, how ChatGPT really hit the mark for the day-to-day utility. I know my mom, who is the farthest from a technologist, she can barely use her iPhone. I put her in headsets, and in the past, of course, they're entertainment, they're fun. She doesn't understand the utility of them. It's not something as a consumer she would ever lean into, but I taught her how to use ChatGPT to make recipes and recommend things for her fridge, and she uses it all the time.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. I want to kind of dive into the bias as well. Maybe Catherine, can you talk a little bit about how AI picks up and learns from real world data? And have you noticed any situations where there are biases in these data sets, obviously, and how that influences the algorithms and the real world applications?
Oh yeah, this is very fresh on my mind, as I have another browser open where I've got code running. In a lot of the work that I do, both at Booz Allen as well as towards my dissertation work, I'm always dealing with imbalanced data sets. And so in my world, I'm dealing a lot with imagery, sound, and just full motion video. So in some current research, and then I'll kind of apply it to some real clinical trial AI work that we're doing at Booz Allen. A lot of the data sets that I use academically to train some of my AI models, let's say for pain detection, or let's say for some generative task that produces a particular type of image. Most of those data sets are heavily Caucasian male slanted. And I don't think that comes as a surprise, because when we're dealing with human subjects, we're either sampling from two different pools, where there might be a university, the majority of the students in the computer science department are male. That's just kind of the fact of the matter. I think it's balancing out a little bit more, but unfortunately that remains a demographic. And also in other universities, they may be majority Caucasian. So we already have kind of a double bias going into it. And naturally, a lot of these types of, doesn't even have to be a neural network, especially a neural network, it's going to learn this thing called inductive bias, which is just a fancy way of saying that all these neural networks are doing is they are approximating some much bigger mathematical equation to learn and extract patterns that is naturally going to associate, or rather correlate, amongst all the data. So we can see that these amplifications are only going to get bigger and bigger as we inject more bias. Now translate that into some current work that I'm doing at Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm leading an AI research study for chronic cancer pain detection. So this is a clinical trial. We are recruiting active cancer patients. And the whole goal is to be able to use not only your face, but also the sound of your voice, words that you're saying, different types of psychosocial indicators to be able to get a sense to help support the oncologist what level of pain you are. Because we can't just say, smiley face emoji, you're a level 7 pain, and that's it. We can't really say that. So we're looking for a more objective way. Now, for all the reasons I just mentioned before, heavily Caucasian, heavily male data sets, that for this clinical trial, when our team worked with the NIH to develop what's called an institutional review board, this is a very, very disciplined process where you don't just merely, line up the cancer patients, they come in. You have to go through several rounds of scrutiny. One of those rounds of scrutiny was, can we collectively, NIH and Booz Allen, make the most diverse, demographically diverse cancer patient data set? Because all data sets after hours that is now being researched really pales in comparison. And so this is not only 12 different bucketed cohorts based on sex, based on Fitzpatrick's skin tone scale, but also age as well, and different levels of pain. And this is our attempt that, all machine learning algorithms start with the data. If the data is biased, there's no amount of ChatGPT, generative adversarial network, there's nothing you can do to transform it to make it more diverse. You can do tricks, but at the end of the day, you are sampling from that same raw distribution of that data that originally came in the front door. So, we are actively really building that into the process at way, way downstream before any model has ever touched it. So that might be kind of a long foray, but it's something that's been on top of my mind.
No, I think that, you even, heard stories of the pharma companies where, in clinical trials through history, right, until probably the last 2 decades, all of the test subjects were, and even the dosing was all based on males, male weight, male metabolism. And so just adding women is, and you think about, we're trying to have a broader spectrum of demographic, gender and culture and race are such small data points compared to everything that we need to take into consideration for these. And from again, the standpoint of how the consumers use it, my hope is that we'll start to have these, these sensors that we have. We're going to start to have, smart materials that can give us much more granular biometric data. It's really, really important that the data we're kind of pushing against to make inferences to help people with their own wellness also has, that we're clear that that data is non-biased and is the broadest spectrum possible.
Yeah, that's great. And it's good to know that people are thinking about this long-term and developing these, processes now to help in the future. I guess since it does kind of stir up a bit of ethical concerns, and we're kind of talking futuristic, how to fix that right now with how do you think that research and developers can kind of approach this bias and work more proactively and effectively today, vice in the future, to mitigate like those concerns? Is there anything that, innovators can do current state?
Yeah, I think, I think that there's 2 approaches to this problem. One is, if you are building a machine learning model or some kind of algorithm itself, there are gates before you develop, there are gates during development, and then there are gates after development to help you kind of screen your debiasing or knowledge of the algorithm and how it is performing. And all of these, some of them are statistical, some of them are more of an art, and some of them are programmatic. So for example, before we start any type of machine learning project, it's important, yes, obviously you want an unbiased data set, but there's so much more that you can do before that. There's a concept that was published several years ago, and now it's really taken off. It's called a model card. And with a model card, and you can look it up on Google, The idea is to be able to essentially do due diligence on not only the data, so you yourself figuring out and documenting where did it come from, how is it governed, how frequently is it updated, who's in it if it's any kind of subjects, what is like, the distribution of it, all the way to the model. So model selection also does make, it kind of makes a difference. And this gets to technical elements of like overfitting and bias and things like this, but also using that model card to be able to say, where did you get your model from? What type of model is it? Who owns this model? And these may not eliminate the bias, but gosh, it's really going to help you do some due diligence way before you ever put your fingers on a keyboard. And then there's different statistical methods that I won't elaborate while you're training the model. And then post-model, there are a lot of, like inspection tools, inspection methods to be able to probe how that model learned. And this is kind of in the realm of explanatory AI, and that in itself has a lot of kind of tricks involved in it as well. But the explainable AI piece is also, in my personal opinion, there are some arts to that. It's not completely a science, but there are so many. It kind of, I think, begins downstream right before you put your hands to keyboard.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's something I kind of was researching recently. There's a professor at MIT, I can't think of its name right this moment, but he leads an XR class there, and his a lot of his research revolves around the digital identity world and making sure that there is equality and to alleviate bias in like the gaming world, to prevent harmful stereotypes or inequalities in personas and identities, as well as realizing that now people have the right to be whoever they are in the metaverse world, in the digital world. And what does that mean? And what kind of trends are they seeing? And something that I thought was really interesting is he noticed that majority of online gamers actually don't use a female persona. They either use, a mythical creature or actually act as men to kind of avoid some of those harmful stereotypes that are in society. So I think just from a development perspective, from a user perspective, just like being aware of the biases also in data sets and in the digital world will help, alleviate them in the future too.
Yeah, I think also, you brought up identity, which I think is a really important component of all of this, is that in the digital realm, we may present in a number of different ways. We may not present, and certainly women don't even feel comfortable often in kind of the gaming scenario, but even in a business scenario, you want to know that whoever you're dealing with is who they say they are. And so being able to, again, in a perfect world, be able to manage our own data, kind of take back control of it, leverage AI to kind of help us with inbound requests for data that might be relevant to an advertiser or to like a KYC scenario, right? I know your customer, but that's really around identity. So you are who you say you are, even though you might have a multitude of personas that you're presenting across the digital landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to kind of even pull that thread too, to kind of maintain some of that oversight, where do you see the role of like policy and regulation coming into play here to foster diversity, to solidify accuracy and identity, and to prevent some of the biases in the future?
I mean, in a perfect world, we want to rely on regulators. The challenge is that regulators are overwhelmed right now with the plethora of technologies that are moving so quickly. I hear people refer to it as a tsunami of technology, and that's really true. So while that's being worked on and regulators are educating themselves, it's down to us as individuals to have a working functional knowledge of at least where our data is going and how we can manage it. And for companies to really start taking responsibilities. And I think it's Harvard who are just doing a survey of companies on, or it might be MIT, on what level of policies do companies have around AI or for responsible AI. And we happen to get the survey. They haven't published it yet, but I think we're going to find that a lot of companies don't have strong enough policies around AI. And we really need to start helping, at least organizations can start helping build frameworks until regulators can start to put some guardrails in place for us.
Yeah, I think that echoing what you're saying is, I think it's up to us and our organizations to build these frameworks for regulation. I can say, for example, at Booz Allen, we recently invested in an ethical firm called Credo AI, and this is not like a toolkit of statistical methods or something. This is actually more in line with the due diligence aspect of it. Mainly because we do so much work for the DoD, which they themselves have output an ethical AI framework as well. So working with all these different federal organizations, I mean, we kind of decided that we've examined the ethical AI problem. It's a very thorny issue. We know that regulators are really calling for some type of moderation. We can even see it now, right? There's an outcry with ChatGPT and a lot of what I think is fear-mongering a little bit. But at the end of the day, we are providing these services. And as, female leaders, I think that we have a very special penchant for understanding what's moderating and what is regulating. So I agree with you. I think it comes down almost to the private sector.
Yeah, and I think that IP question that you mentioned, I understand the challenge that creators have, but the technology, we have digital asset management, right? So we could actually start to find ways. It's a mammoth undertaking, but in theory, you could have a digital asset management for the images that an AI is being trained on, even though it's in the millions and into billions. But it's not helpful to. There's just not a black and white issue. And I think we're seeing a lot of people say, well, we have to stop using, generative AI, especially in the creative side. Creators themselves are influenced by other creators, right? But there's just no way for us to really know what's in their neural network, right? How is their art influenced? It's going to be the same with AI. We can use the technology to actually solve this issue, but we just have to think about, what would that look like? And it's going to be this very complex web of microtransactions. And it's not an easy problem to solve, but I firmly believe that it's something that collectively we can come to an agreement on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw in the chat that there are some questions from the audience too. So I'll kind of do one last question and wrap up so we can save some time for those as well. But before wrapping up kind of this inspiring day, I know we're last to go. It's been a remarkable day of discussing AI with women leaders. I want to know both of your thoughts on, the impact and influence that women specifically can have here in the AI arena going forward.
Wow, where to start? That's a big question to unpack. Amy, I don't know if you've got some thoughts while I ruminate on this. There's many.
Well, first of all, this group is a very inspirational group, and a number of women who are already part of Women of the Future. We're just at a conference in Paris that I attended just this week. And one of the key elements that I kept hearing over and over again was education, and education globally, access and inclusion. So, actually having classes to teach the basics, right? It's not even about, learning to code. It's really just having a functional understanding of technology as a whole. And so I think it's really important for us collectively to continue that movement. And one of the remarkable things both about Women in the Future and this Women in Tech event that I was just at, this isn't us just getting up on stage talking about it. Like, these are women who are sharing case studies and are, they ran one Web3 program in Burundi, for example, to teach the local ecosystem there. This is how we ensure, this tackles so many of these issues that we've talked about, unconscious bias, really being able to, use this technology to augment humanity and not lose control of it. We're in control of it now, right? That may not always be the case. And so, I'd like to see more classes, more education. can't remember the woman who just spoke. It's late for me, everybody. It's 10:30 at night. So I can't remember the woman who just spoke, but I watched her talk and I loved it. She's teaching, women blockchain, right? So these are things that we can do, right? It's something that we can do, get involved. We can write checks. We can give our time. We can mentor. We can help run programs. Those are things that I think are grassroots way that we can ensure the next generation are actively involved in how all of this technology moves forward.
I mean, I think that Amy said it so eloquently. I don't know how more to add on, but I do think I kind of reflect on my daughter. She is 11, and I am proud to say that she knows probably more AI in her class than anyone around her. And to her, the world it's not like a boy versus girl kind of thing, and she sees many shades of gray between just boy and girl as well. So I think that in addition to men and women, I think that there's an inclusion aspect for all different forms that are non-binary in between. I think it's a natural evolution of technology infusing into our society. I think a lot back to, I am about to finish my first science fiction novel, and I've been working on it for a while. But if you look at sci-fi, it's mainly a lot of white men. I mean, they're all Asimov and of this breed. And there is a couple of very famous science fiction female writers, and they will all say that it's not approachable. There's no role model there. The story does not really speak to them. And although, that's just science fiction and we're talking world of AI, there's many content creators where if there's not some kind of representation that almost comes from a deeper psychosocial part, it has nothing to do with math or algorithms or computer science, there's almost a psychosocial element that you convey when you are starting to leach it into your own technology and distribute it. Believe me, there are parts of the population that will be left unaccounted for if it's just strictly a male kind of dominated world. So I agree. I'm very big on education. I think education is like the number one thing to help women, as well as actually positive mentorship, to bring up other young women or other fellow peer women, and also those who are kind of in the non-binary LGBTQ community, because I think oftentimes that group is overlooked as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And kind of a personal story for me as well. I think education, you guys nailed it a lot. I think interest for young women and diverse groups as well is really important, making technology cool for them. At a young age, my friend's daughter, who's I think about 13 or 14, was picking her high school classes. And I was like, do you mind if I take a look and see what you're like looking between? And she's a creative for sure, not really looking to get into the STEM field. And then I started talking to her about UX and UI and design and digital art. And she's like, that is so cool. I've never heard of that. I didn't know that was a career and a passion. And she started taking it and has been doing some of her own, little projects on the side. And I'm just like, warm my heart. So I think on top of education, like showing the future of America, how cool technology is too. Well, I think that wraps up majority of our discussion. Thanks to the Women of the Future for having us. I actually am not sure how to look into the big chat. Do either of you see the questions?
Oh, if you click over to comments, there's private chat and comments on the right. Let's see, we have Jeffrey O'Hinton, called the father of AI, recently quit Google. Oh, they want to talk about, that it's almost too late for regulatory to catch up with AI development, and wanted maybe a comment on where we thought regulation is. Again,
I don't know if we lost Amy there.
Oh, did you lose me?
Nope, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on where we are with regulatory. I was just in DC at an FBI event, talking about more around security and privacy in this realm. And yes, there is a lot of work to be done, but people are very, very, regulators are very passionate about this. They are looking at this from every single angle. Everybody recognizes that something we can't do is over-regulate quickly, right? So it's going to take time. And I'm not going to argue with the godfather of AI, right? If he believes it's too late, then that's his opinion. I like to look at everything as, a solvable problem, and we will get there. But I do believe firmly that all of us have a responsibility to educate ourselves. We can't just rely on, point the finger at everybody else. And, Catherine's getting a PhD. Now, short of doing that, I'm not sure we're all going to be able to do that, but this is, and she's an excellent role model to her daughter. Like, these are things that we can do. These are things that tomorrow you can pick up the phone and mentor somebody. So it seems like it's a very small thing, and we have to trust that the bigger system will work, but let's also be very active in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and not point the finger at others and just say, well, they'll take care of it.
Yeah, I think that there's also an element of societal education and societal, I don't know, I want to say the word innumeracy, but I'm not sure if that's the right word. But there's, for example, gambler's dilemma. You go and you're going to play, some game, and it's going to be random every single time. But the gambler thinks, oh no, there's going to be a chance it's going to, come out in my favor. It never will, because everything's completely random. And so there's like this fallacy, I think, because a lot of people going into it are coming in with a level of passion and a level of illiteracy. And so I think that instead of relying on Jeff Hinton, which, yeah, I've had to read a lot of his papers actually for school. Actually, a lot of Jeff Hinton's proteges are at OpenAI. They're at Google, So he himself has kind of fathered a lot of the folks who have really actually led a lot of this generative work. That being aside, what matters, I think, is that this technology is not going to stop. I think there are multiple reasons we probably can't get into today for why I don't think it's going to stop. But it doesn't mean that, we have to surrender with blind abandon, everything to big tech companies. I think what's happening right here, just blossoming some of this tech literacy, is a big step, because we just have to be smarter about, we all know now that we're susceptible to phishing schemes, from email. 20 years ago, we probably didn't know that, but now we know not to open the email that asks for the last 4 digits of our social security. I think it's getting to that level of literacy soon. I think this will be commoditized, in probably about a decade, where a lot of this AI will just become, commonplace and not as scary, leading to, this dystopian future as some, may believe it to be. It's just very startling how quickly it came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up most of the comments. Any key takeaways or closing remarks that you, Amy or Catherine, want to make?
Well, I would like to say a huge thank you to Sue Rooney and Anne-Marie Enns for putting this together, and this incredible group of speakers today. I was able to catch like sort of the first 3 or 4 talks and the last few talks, and incredible content, and really, really thrilled to be a part of Women of the Future. And, was very, very lucky to be a part of this panel with both of you today.